Since we're one of a kind, I feel it's only appropriate to start this channel with a review of So I'm a Spider, So What? The anime adapts a light novel by the same title, written by Okinawa and illustrated by Tsukasa Kiryu. At this point, the anime is still airing. But with 14 episodes in, I think I've seen enough to give you a spoiler-free review and to tell you whether you should give this anime a try or not. So let's see, how many boxes does it check? So let's start with the plot. This is an isekai. For those of you who are not as far down the rabbit hole, there are so many anime characters that get transported or reincarnated into another world that it's gotten its own genre, the isekai. More often than not, this other world is based on medieval fantasy. Bonus points if it's got a magic system resembling RPG mechanics. In fact, many times the other world is actually an RPG the main characters get trapped in. In So I'm a Spider, So What? Through some sort of unexplained explosion, an entire class gets transported into such a fantastic world. Most of the students get super lucky and reincarnated as elves or humans, some even as royalty. But one of the students got the short end of the stick because she got reincarnated as a spider. That fact alone might have been enough for most to throw in the towel. But on top of that, she finds herself in a dungeon with tons of more powerful monsters than her. But our titular spider Kumoko ain't gonna let that get her down. While she's struggling for survival, some of her reincarnated classmates attend an academy to learn more about magic and combat. I don't know if it's just standard procedure over there, or if it has to do with the current situation. And by situation I mean the threat of an all-out war against demons. Either way, this war is pretty important and gives the story an actual plot. You know, as much as I enjoy watching Kumoko level up, without that overarching plot it might end up getting boring at some point, I'm afraid. I don't want to spoil anything here, so let me just say this much. I really dig what they did with the timelines, because it adds a sense of mystery to the story that got me totally hooked now. So plot box? Check. Okay, let's look at the world building next. Since this is set in a medieval fantasy world that leans on RPG tropes, the world building isn't something you've never seen done before. The demons and monsters versus elves and humans isn't new either. However, the skill-based magic system is pretty neat and very detailed. Whenever Kumoko levels up, she gets to pick some new skills. Depending on which one she picks, the ones she gets offered after the next level up build on those that came before, kind of like a skill tree. Also, there seem to be some ramifications that come with picking up these skills. So far, it is hinted that it can have an effect on its wielder, and one character even stated that these skills can be dangerous. So I'm really curious where the story will go with this, because Kumoko chose skills that, and I quote, tickle her in her edgelord. Overall, the world building is rather superficial except for the skill system, which makes sense since we spend most of our time with Kumoko grinding inside a dungeon. But there is a lot of potential for it to become more interesting in the future, and I didn't find major issues with the world building so far. So world building box? Check. Next up, the art. Well, the 2D animation is good enough. Don't expect an art style rivaling Shinkai movies or something like Attack on Titan, but it's solid. CGI on the other hand, I'm not gonna lie, it's bad. Not Berserk level bad, but still, I'm not a fan. Talking about Berserk, apparently the studio learned something from that monstrosity, because So I'm a Spider, So What? Was made at the same studio and even by the same director. Seems like our little spider is not the only one who can evolve. Oh, and by the way, Kumoko's design is actually done in CGI, which I didn't notice at first because Kumoko's CGI design blends really well with the surrounding 2D animation. Also, her movements look super fluid and spiderly, so her CGI was actually done really well. The CGI for the other monsters took me out of it at first, but I get used to it, so yeah, the art is alright and I've definitely seen worse when it comes to CGI. So what about the art box? Yeah, let's check that too. Oh, and fan service is so far very docile. I don't know if that's a positive or negative for you, but I thought I'd let you know. Okay, moving on. Soundtrack. The 2 openings are great. I've actually been listening to the second one almost non-stop while making this drawing. Aside from the openings and the endings, the rest of the soundtrack is really good too. At least 2 tracks caught my ear, and especially the battle theme gives Kumoko's fights an epic and uplifting feel. So soundtrack box? Check. Oh, and the voice acting is really good too, especially for Kumoko. Alright, last but not least, let's talk about the characters. The main character Kumoko is awesome. She may even be one of my most favorite characters ever. Since I like grinding and leveling up most when playing games, watching Kumoko do just that might be my thing. And with her funny, upbeat personality, there was rarely ever a dull moment. I like that she has a distinct personality and isn't whiny or doesn't feel sorry for herself, even though she'd actually have any right to do so. Every success she has is well earned, and that makes me root for her on the journey ahead even more. But don't worry, we're not breaking isekai traditions here. Of course, we still have our bland hero protagonist as surrogate for the audience. I don't know, I've never gotten the appeal of that trope. I mean, why would you think, oh, a bland looking person with not much of a personality? Oh well, I guess that's me. I'd rather you give me a lot of different characters and I'll find one to project myself onto. Doing it the bland way is kinda lazy. But this anime has Kumoko, so I'll forgive him. In Soimaspidersowhat, the role of the bland protagonist is filled by another reincarnate called Shun in his previous life, or Shlain in this new world. Since I'm not a fan of this trope, Shun's character was a bit boring for me to watch so far, especially next to the charismatic Kumoko. But I like the story building up around him, so he might actually have some potential to grow into a more interesting character in the future, I'll give him that much. But there's one character I absolutely can't stand, and she is linked to a trope I absolutely can't stand. The younger sister of the bland male protagonist that is for some reason weirdly obsessed with her older brother. They didn't go the Sword Art Online route in this anime, and I beg that won't happen in the future. But still, get a life, girl! Except for this one character though, I think all the other side characters are either intriguing or at least fill a role that piqued my interest. But let's be honest, Kumoko is the one who carries the series. No wonder it was named after her. For her alone I'd keep watching, but the other characters complement her well enough. So character box, check. Okay, so this anime checked all the boxes, I think I can recommend it. But don't let Kumoko's cute character design fool you into thinking this anime is for kids. Depends on how much your kids can take, but I thought I should include this warning that there's a lot of bloodshed while Kumoko is leveling up. And the plot doesn't seem to be aimed at kids at all. But to anyone else who likes RPG-based fantasy stories, seasoned with comedy, I'd wholeheartedly recommend it. Having seen or read some isekai before, going in I didn't really expect much from the show, to be honest. If it wasn't for the unique concept of a reincarnation as a spider, I doubt I would have given it a chance. So I'm really surprised how invested I'm in the story now 14 episodes in. We have so many isekai, but not a lot that deal with non-human reincarnation and its implications. And I think this one is a great take on that. We've had enough of the bland Kiritos. I much prefer a main character with Kumoko's attitude to make the most of the bad cards that she was dealt. Giving up? Not this spider. I've rarely wanted a main character to succeed so much. And she's legitimately funny. I found myself laughing out loud several times while watching this anime. But it's not all comedy. There is at times a tragic undertone to the series, so it's well balanced out. Anyway, it's been fun to watch so far, but since I've only seen 14 of 24 episodes, I reserve the right to change my mind. But on my anime list, the light novel this anime is based on has a score higher than 8, which is probably a good sign for the anime as well. I for one will definitely keep watching and give you a final review of the entire show once it finished airing. If you enjoyed this review, please consider giving it a like. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in future videos.
Anyway, farewell.